or 60 AMD compute units running at fairly slow clocks based on the kind of constraints we've seen on Xbox One, PS4 and of course the Pro. The truth is, Microsoft has broken free of those constraints in ways I'm not sure anybody could have anticipated, certainly not me. So to cut to the chase, Scorpio only has 40 compute units, but these are clocked very, very highly, 1172 megahertz to be precise. That's up against 853 megahertz on the OG Xbox One and 911 on PS4 Pro. So compared to the new Sony console, that's an additional 11% of Radeon hardware, but a 27% boost to frequency. Combined, this gives Scorpio a 43% compute advantage. Next up, memory. Lots of controversy here when Microsoft promised bandwidth in the region of 320 gigabytes per second. Would they use GDDR5? Would they go for faster G5X? Would we see a continuation of ESRAM? Well,
what's up, game players? How are you guys doing? I want to welcome you guys to a special Analog Circle episode. This is actually a round table. Yes, it is, because I am not by myself. It is not the Plus Edition. It's actually two guests on the show at one time. This is unbelievable technology, folks. So let me introduce the guests. First off, returning for a third time. You guys have heard him before. Let me reintroduce you, if you haven't, to Mr. Mastino Davis. What's going on, brother?
Good, Kiaun. Hey, everyone.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Let me thank you publicly for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on here. I greatly appreciate it, Mastino. Thank you.
No problem.
Alrighty, and second up, yes, a second guest. Now, this guy, you guys have heard his emails almost since the show started. So you should be very, very familiar with this gentleman, and it is such a pleasure to have him on the podcast this week. Guys, game players, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you guys the myth, the legend of emails of the podcast, the MVP, Mr. Cody Clark. What's going on, man? How you feeling?
Yeah. I was actually pondering just being quiet just to spook you. I thought that would have been funnier. But, yeah.
It's all right, man. It's okay. Now, Mr. Cody Clark, really quickly before we get into the topics, could you please tell the listeners out there just a little bit of your background with gaming, sir?
Discovered you through Game Enthuse and Who the Goose who mentioned you to me, and found your energy, which is a nice way to kind of counterbalance my what's the best way to describe it? Apathy for the industry over the past couple of years. Before my current job, I was working Electronic Arts for 4.5 years here in Fairfax in Northern Virginia for Mythic, the guys that did like Dark Age of Camelot and Warhammer Online and stuff like that. So I got to be part of the belly of the beast for a number of years and worked up in the support side of it. So I got to be a manager and kind of like watch everything, explode on the inside. And so I have kind of the advantage of seeing how like that specific beast, how it churned on the inside. And so it's given me a point of view that a lot of my friends don't really get to have, because just being one of the nerds that gets to live the dream, and then it kind of gets ripped from you by corporate shenanigans. So it's kind of now I'm in the healing process, trying to get back to actually really enjoying games. And luckily, with you guys with Game Enthuse, Spawn on Me, and some of the other stuff, I actually have some pretty good messages and some good positive vibes. So that's what I'm doing, is listening to you guys and moving forward.
Wow, well, let me tell you, Cody, I greatly appreciate the kind words. They really mean a lot, man. So thank you so much for that. And I just have to say, like I was telling Cody just behind the scenes, I was so amazed to hear that you worked for EA and some of the stories, one or two of the stories that you shared with me were very bonkers, man. It was amazing to hear, but my goodness, working for EA, one of the, if not the biggest publisher in gaming, that's just amazing, brother. That is so amazing. But I know at this point in time, we might not have enough time to really delve into it like I would love to. Maybe we could do it at another time. But we are here, ladies and gentlemen, and listeners alike. I guess that's all the same, under the same umbrella. But we are here to talk about some of the biggest, if not the biggest news of the week, possibly the month. Xbox Scorpio. Now, if you guys don't know, which I'm sure most of you listening do know, the specs came out this week from Digital Foundry. And I will tell you guys, I'm not a big spec guy. I don't understand it, the gigahertz, the megahertz, or whatever. That's how old my PC gaming knowledge is. I was on megahertz when I was playing. But these two gentlemen, these guys, they are PC guys. And for people like myself who are not in the know of what these specs really mean, you guys' personal opinions, how impressed are you guys with the specs? Whichever one of you wants to go first, that is fine.
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go. So far, it looks good on paper, but we just had a bunch of releases for AMD, the Ryzen chips, and they didn't perform quite as much as initially as what AMD was touting from their news conference. I assume the same will be the same for Scorpio. We see good numbers on paper. They talk about the upscaling they did with Forza. Got it running at 60 frames, but that game's highly optimized. So I'm kind of curious to see when other developers like AEA or one of the big boys on AAA, if they'll be able to squeeze the 60 frames at 4K out.
The big deal for me is the fact that they've been developing this course. This has been on the books. They've been working with the specific processors and everything for more than a year. So obviously they were kind of locked in. Literally they announced what they're going to do, and then all of a sudden AMD a bunch of other chip makers like, here are our new chips, and all the fans were like, well, why aren't you going to use these new chips? It's like, because the architecture is already set. You can only you can't just pull up a foundation of a house and just lay a new foundation literally when you're putting on the roof. So I think and just like the Xbox and the PlayStation 4, the life of the system is stuff's only going to get better. I mean, look at how splotchy and annoying, how much bragging the PS3 went through with all of its cell processors and crap like that. But at the very end of its life, when people, when developers actually knew what they were doing, and they could pull some pretty fancy stuff out of that system. I mean, it was still a pain in the hoo-ha to develop on, but people that knew what they were doing could do some pretty neat tricks. So this way, the architecture is all exactly the same, fundamentally the same for the PlayStation, the Xbox One, and the Scorpio. They're all it's all the same thing. It's DirectX 12. So that's all going to be there. It's just they have a little bit more horsepower to pull out of it. Well, I say a little bit. They've got a lot more horsepower than the Xbox One. I mean, I wasn't expecting numbers to be this big. Like when you look at the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation Pro, that jump was nominal as far as like when, it literally felt like, it was an iPad and an iPad 2, 1 year difference in what it felt like. This definitely feels a much further jump just in computing power, memory, the bandwidth for the memory, it's pretty impressive. So.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. One of the things, actually a couple things stood out to me with this console. One, it's going to have 12 gigs of RAM. 12! Which is amazing, which they were saying 8 of those will be allocated to strictly games, the video games themselves,
right.
And the other 4 will be freed up for the OS, which is astonishing. I'm only imagining, what could really happen having that many more gigs of RAM to work with? I mean, right now, what is the Xbox One using? 6? Is it 6 or 5?
It's 8 gigs. It's 8 gigs.
Right. 8 gigs total, but are they using like?
Oh, and then how much the operating system and what? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's. I don't even know what it uses in total. I just know. I don't know what the operating system uses. I just know the total is 8 gigs, which I'm not actually impressed with the amount of RAM that any of the systems have, because I mean we've been having 8 gigs in PCs for like what, 6 years, 7 years, like. I was still working at EA, and like we had people were building machines with 12 and 16 gigs of RAM in 2008, 2010, I guess, 2010. So I like that doesn't really impress me. The speed that we have for the RAM now is pretty bonkers, and the price is so much cheaper. But that's also kind of bugs me. I'm like you guys could, I know they're doing it to a price, but I'm like, you guys could put in 24 gigs of RAM. I don't know what they'd use 24 gigs of RAM. I don't think, but they could. It wouldn't be that much more expensive. I remember when 256 megabytes of RAM was like $400. I was building my first Macintosh back in like '99, and then they had that tsunami or whatever that like smashed into like whatever city was like the main RAM producer, and RAM went from being like $1 per meg, and then it shot up, So that doesn't really impress me. Memory doesn't really impress me.
I gotcha. I mean, for me, I thought that outside of the memory, though, outside of that, I heard, now maybe Cody, you might have heard differently. I was talking to Mastino about this earlier, but I heard that it's going to have 4K playback with the streaming, 4K streaming playback, and it's going to be native, from what I understand. Is that true? And if it is true, do you think it'll make that big of a difference when it goes to market, where some people that are streamers, this is what they do, they have a passion for it? Do you think that could possibly move systems as well?
I don't know, because I mean, before this Digital Foundry thing came out, that was the big rumor that literally like it won't really be native, blah blah blah. So I don't do 4K, so I don't. To me, that's a non entity. I don't know about Mastino, but to me, that's one of the things I actually do not care about. So I don't know. What do you think, dude?
Frames per second over resolution for me, but
yeah.
It's diminished returns on 4K TVs anyhow. Your eye can only see and pick up the detail. You're sitting very close up to a TV. So it's more marketing hype, in my opinion. If you're not going to be sitting close to your TV, if you're sitting 10 feet away from your TV, you won't notice 1080p from 4K. I can't detect it unless you have 120-inch screen.
Yeah, I was going to say, over hanging out with the Goose, that was one of the things. He actually has this big, ridiculously like 70-inch or ridiculously large 4K TV, and then he has a standard HD TV next to it. And we were playing. He was doing a comparison with Gears of War on both, and with the Xbox One S on one and a normal Xbox One on the other, to try to get the comparison. And all I know is I got motion sick watching either screen, so I gave up. So I think it was the game. I don't know. I mean, that feature to me is kind of more like the entertainment system. Like it's the how they didn't call it the Nintendo gaming console. They call it the entertainment system. It's one of those things, like. I can't fathom that. That part doesn't bother. That doesn't. Whatever. I care about. Are there going to be fun games that I want to play on it? I don't. And that's the other quandary. It's like I remember when the Xbox when I remember when the PlayStation 4 launched or was announced, and they put the specs out for that, and everyone was talking about how amazing the technology was on the PlayStation 4 and yada yada yada, and how it completely crushed the Xbox One. But the launch titles for the PlayStation 4, there weren't that many, but there were so many in the horizon coming. So there was a promise of that awesome technology and, footing the bill for the games will come soon. And I was like, So when this article on Polygon hit where they're like, yeah, but is it gonna sell out of the game? I was like, it's using the same games that have already been out. Once the Scorpio hits, do all of the old Xbox One games just disappear? Does the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility library just vanish? Those games are still there, If you want to go play Madden 12, you can do it. It will look hideous, but you can do it.
Now you actually. Oh, were you gonna say something, Mastino?
Well, I'm just looking at what they've confirmed for release games or games that are going to be coming out soon thereafter, and it's kind of like, besides Red Dead Redemption 2, maybe Battlefront 2, maybe there's not anything that tells me, hey, I need to upgrade my console.
Not even Crackdown 3?
They haven't got an official date for that yet.
Okay. Well,
Crackdown's definitely on my radar, and that was a Total Mayhem or whatever that Grand Theft Auto slash.
the Volition game.
Yeah,
that looks pretty cool too. I'm looking forward to that myself. But
I'll play them on the standard Xbox. I don't need a PlayStation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. The games, I'm sure, will be good. It's just I don't see anything that goes, hey, you need this box in order to run this game. Nothing's jumping out of it. They're all play on the Xbox One.
Right.
It's kind of but the jump from like the 360 to the One, and then from the One to the Scorpio, it's not that big of a jump. And for $500, you get $500 more performance. No, I don't think so. Unless you have a 4K TV and you want to see it in 4K and you're running 4K Blu-rays, and I get that. But for the people that aren't running 4K TVs, it's pointless in my opinion.
All right, so you think that the not the possibility, but actually being able to, now I know this is all just check boxes and they're trying to just cover bases. I get that, but you don't think that being able to play your 360 games, I know people are going to say, 360, come on, man, that's last generation, it's that and the third. But the fact of being able to play your old 360 games, getting a better frame rate on them, possibly having better resolution, you don't think that, that could be a selling point, along with having a 4K Blu-ray player built in and actually having a 4K streaming playback and which some people are trying to downplay now because it seems like the tables have turned a little bit, being able to get the best multiplats on the Scorpio. If they were to do some extra bells and whistles, which I'm sure they won't because third party wants to keep everything pretty much parallel with each other, but if it was a possibility that they actually put extra bells and whistles on the Scorpio version versus even just the Xbox One version, would that possibly be a game changer for you? I mean, like case in point, Crackdown 3 with all of the destruction that they're talking about and the cloud computing and everything, having a city get totally level. Of course, we don't know if that's still the case right now, but actually having that situation being presented on the Xbox Scorpio versus probably not nearly the same amount of destruction on the Xbox One. And this just being one case, just one game that could possibly show off the benefits to having a Scorpio. Do you think that still wouldn't be enough for consumers, real hardcore guys, to jump in?
You asking me?
I'm sorry.
It was a broad question.
Yeah.
I have to say that I would hope that they wouldn't do that because I don't want developers wasting time and money to put more polish. I want them to put all the time and polish into a game that makes a good game. I don't want them to then have to, take hostage some of that time and say, okay, we have to make it extra polished for this. I don't, make the game good. then allow the Xbox's tools with the Scorpio's version to utilize it and make it more better. Let it, it'll run slightly faster. It'll have, it can say, it can just upscale slightly and be like, oh, I'm allowed to have, instead of 30 million colors, I can have 33 million colors, and that's going to do this. Instead of having, however many whatever of RAM for making load time faster, it's going to have twice that. Like, that's built into the system. Don't make the developers have to go waste time on that garbage when they could just make the game fun. It's just let them focus on that. That's really all I want. The system will sell itself because it'll just seem the next natural upgrade because it's going to be better. And we're human beings always look to get the best thing. You get the budget thing or the best thing. That's why exotic cars sell when you could really just go drive a friggin' Hyundai. You could go spend $14,000 on a Hyundai, or you're going to go spend, $75 on a BMW. Who sells better? BMW.
That's actually an interesting point. Actually, it is. What about you, Mastino? How do you feel about that, man? Would that sway you in any way, or you would still stick firm with the Xbox One and it not at this time being worth it to you to actually upgrade?
I'm gonna wait personally. I'll get the savings in my pocket after a year, and they drop the price
or some ridiculous bundle. Yeah,
they're not gonna have enough games to make it worth your while, in my opinion. Unless, like I said, unless you've got the 4K TV, you got the HDR, and you got it all set up. If you're still on 1080p, there's no point, in my opinion, to get it.
Gotcha. Okay, all right. Now, I know time is ticking away, but very quickly, before we get out of here, I wanted to also ask you guys about some of the backlash that Microsoft has been getting over this console. Now, I'm sure the listeners out there, I'm sure you've seen the headlines. They're saying, it doesn't make a difference. It can be the most powerful console. It doesn't have any games. It doesn't matter. Now, even though that is a very true statement, at this moment, there are no games to me outside of Crackdown and, man, that might be it for me, brother. Crackdown might be it. I'm not really interested in Sea of Thieves. I'm not interested in State of Decay at this moment. But for me personally, Crackdown being the only game in the foreseeable future, and maybe Cuphead, that might finally come out. It might, right? It is a true statement. But the problem that I have with this is nobody was saying that when Sony had came out the gate and they did not have those exclusive games. What really carried Sony over the years? Yeah, they sprinkled a couple here and there in, but for the most part, it was third party. Third-party games always look better. It was always touted that they perform better. And I mean, true statements. I'm not arguing that. True. But now that Microsoft has the quote-unquote upper hand, has 4K, has this powerful machine out, now they want to try to pull that card and say power doesn't matter if you don't have the games. I mean, do you guys think that that is an unfair comparison, or do you think that it's fair game? Me, I don't think it's fair. But what about you, Cody? How do you feel about it, man?
It's looking back at the same announcement. Like I said, when Sony launched with the PlayStation 4, and they're like, "Oh, it's powerful. This, don't worry, the games are coming." Microsoft isn't even saying, "Don't worry, the games are coming." They're like, "Hey, this is our boutique item. This is our, it's going to be the same as whatever. This is just going to be our super high-end item." And I'm like, cool. Thank you for being completely transparent about that. If they want to come out and be like, they're the game, I'm like, they're just not, people just aren't going to be happy. People just, they need something to scream and rail at. It's the same thing how, whatever Last Horizon, people are toting it as the Zelda killer, even though it wasn't a Zelda-style game. It's just, PlayStation fans have to be mad at something, Xbox fans have to be mad at something, Nintendo fans have to be mad at themselves. That's, Oh, man. So, yeah, no, it's not gonna matter. It's the Xbox always does crap in Japan. The majority of the big support for PlayStation is Japanese developers. Most of them are making mobile games and they're just porting over Vita stuff now. So like, you know, it's all marketing and woo. So people need clicks. People need to sell stories. You know, as much as I hate to admit it, it gets me every time I go on to Polygon and they have some blah blah blah. Every single one of these things about, you know, it's all just smoke and puff.
I hear that. How do you feel about it, Mastino? All of the, you know, the things that have been happening, all of the headlines and different articles. I mean, what's your take on it?
What's the reason for getting a new console to play the next generation of games? They're not going to have any. So all the games coming out are going to be playable on Xbox One. There is no exclusive for this Scorpio. So there isn't. To me, it's not that special. You know, there's no incentive for me to purchase that because they're not giving me anything different I can get on the Xbox One except better resolution.
Okay.
And I think they're mentioning, you know, that's what they're calling it, a boutique item. They're not coming out and saying, hey, this is the same thing they're doing with the HoloLens. They're like, hey, this is a niche item, $3,000, please. So I kind of see, and I'm okay with that. You know, we can go play Diablo 3 on a normal Xbox One and just have a great time. It's not going to play. It'll look maybe a tidbit shinier on a Scorpio, but you're just going to have just as much fun with your friends. So you can go spend $200, $150 and have just as much fun. You probably should do that. Microsoft's going to make money either way. So, I mean, yeah, he's got a very super valid point. There really is no reason to get the Scorpio, say, for it being, you know, it's the shiniest, newest, fanciest bells and whistle in a device that you don't need, you know? It's something next to sit to your juicer and your blender and your popcorn maker on your kitchen table. You know? It's new, so we want it. So in that sense, he's absolutely right. It's still not, but I personally, I'm not going to get it when it comes out. I know people who are. I'll get one eventually, but no reason to get it when it comes out. And, you know, but yeah, there's no killer app. There's no service or whatever. Any service that's available, you can get it on my Xbox One or Xbox One S. So yeah, it's a wonderful little extra item that is.
Okay, just a bonus question for you guys before we get out of here. I know we're cutting it close, but how long do you think Microsoft will keep this up? What I mean by that is actually supporting the Xbox One, the original Xbox One, and keeping things on, you know, pretty much parity with the Xbox Scorpio. How long do you think they'll actually keep the parity up? Well, what do you think about that, Mastino? How long do you give it?
2 years, 18 months. They'll get the last cycle of games out, and then they'll go, you know what? We got a better mousetrap. Let's build games that are going to run only on that. They got to have some exclusiveness to their console.
They do.
If the one can play the same thing as a Scorpio, then why am I going to get a Scorpio? It's not going to happen. So they're at some point going to go, you know what? No one's buying this thing. We're going to drop the price and announce some exclusive titles for it. And it may be in the VR sector too. That's the one thing we didn't really talk about because they're gonna end up with Oculus or HTC or something plugging into that.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
They may go that route as the console for VR. So we don't know yet.
I don't even know. That's both, you know, all of the hardware companies will just push their hottest thing and their iPhone 12 on us and their Samsung Galaxy whatever. So when they're done making money and found a way to make it cheaper or faster or better in their opinion, then that's when this cycle ends. And we as consumers really don't have any input on that, you know. They'll change their minds whenever. So 2 years, I was thinking that's a little bit slim, but actually the more I think about that, that's actually that's probably overly generous now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah,
when you're done paying the credit card off, you'll have to go get a new one.
And the final question for you guys. What do you think Phil Spencer's going to come out on the E3 stage and say for the price of the Scorpio? I'm thinking, really quickly, I thought at first it was going to be $400, but after looking at, the tech and hearing you guys talk about it and seeing what Digital Foundry said, I'm leaning more towards $5. I don't think they can go over $5 without it being suicide, but I still think $5 is pushing it. But for the tech that's in there, I don't think they can come in under $500. Do you think that's where they'll place it, Mastino, or do you think they're gonna go a little lower or higher?
I'm not sure if they're gonna what value added componentry or extra controller gonna throw out to make it higher. 500, I think, is the sweet spot. If Phil Spencer said, "Hey, mouse and keyboard out of the gate," people are gonna flock to it as a mini PC. So it's a cheap mini PC that they'll end up hacking that, and making a desktop out of it. But yeah, I think 500 is probably a safe call on that from everything I read on it.
Yeah, I mean that's what Digital Foundry said, $499, and that's the safe bet. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they said, "Look, we're gonna do $599, but we're gonna do some little shtick for the first early adopters, the first X many thousand people get it for $100 off or whatever." I mean, I look at that, I'm like, yeah, for a console, $599 is as high as I would go. I would be happy at $499, but I wouldn't bat an eye if they're like, "No, we have to sell this at $599." Would it be suicide? They're going to say it's a boutique item anyway, so they could always rebuff it like that. But
Gotcha.
but no, I'm pretty sure the safe bet is $499. But like I said, if they're like $599, I'm like, yeah, $100 extra bucks. You could walk away with that, and it's not a big deal. Anything above that, it's just not. Literally, unless they're going to package it with a HoloLens or something, yeah, you're not going to. Or a freaking whatever the big 51-inch Surface that they have, the thing that costs like $20,000. Yeah.
Oh man, well, I guess, man, that is about it then. I mean, once again, wow, great discussion. I truly appreciate you, Cody Clark, being on again, as well as Mr. Mastino Davis. Thank you so much. Are there any last words that you would like to say to the listeners, Mastino?
There's no Connect either.
Yeah. You're gonna have to pay for the adapter that used to be free. Yeah.
No, that's all I got, Kiaun. I just had to drop that.
I dig it, man. What about you, Cody? Any last words, brother?
No, actually, after hearing Mastino's points, I think it's actually helped cool me down on the Scorpio. I'm still excited about it, but yeah, it doesn't. It's nice to have a nice rational, slightly further look at it and be like, yeah, I can definitely. This isn't gonna. I'm not gonna be up on Amazon at 1 a.m. trying to get my pre-order on now. So it's good.
I tell you, I'm still stuck on the hype train. I'm trying to get off, man, but I'm stuck at the moment. So we'll see what happens at E3. That'll definitely be the deciding factor. Hopefully you guys will be able to be back on during that time. I'm sure that'll be a very interesting conversation once everything is all out in the open and we have all of the details that we need.
Well, E3 is going to be all like public access and crap now, right? Like they're going to have a bunch of like fans wandering all over the place. So I think it's going to be a weirder and a much more different format because Microsoft's doing their thing, Sunday now, like before the whatever. So I think it's going to be a complete shift. I think we're going to see I can't wait to see what sort of one-upmanship Sony and Microsoft throw at each other. That's actually going to be the part I look forward to.
It's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be great. But once again, listeners out there, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Round Table of the Analog Circle podcast. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to reach out and call 443-261-4607 or email the show at the Analog Circle Podcast at gmail.com, and also leave your comments and what you feel. If you feel something, then it must be real. But with that being said, I was your host, Kiaun Mitchell, and I was joined today by Mr. Cody Clark. And
Yep.
yes, sir. And Mr. Mastino Davis.
Thanks for having me, Kiaun.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, you guys take care out there. And remember this. It is not about the console. It's about the games, brother. So play them in good health. And with that, I will talk to you guys later. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yes.